whatever time it is. Okay, is it Anchor?
Yes.
Was that pretty close? Encore. Please come up here, this is where you're going to sit, sir. Hold on, you ready? Call to order the town's special business meeting to do interviews for committees, boards, and authorities. Hi, welcome. So, we have your application here,
Yes.
and if there's something else that you would like to add that's not in here that you'd like to tell us, otherwise, we just go around and each ask you a question, maybe two, and that's it.
The reason why I applied is we've been here now in this township for about 2009, so whatever, 11 years. I'm working out of Basson for about 8 years now, and kids are growing up to the point where you have a little more time on your hands, where you try and figure out how can you contribute to what is going on around you. And with my skill set and my background, I figured this was probably the right thing to do. Last year or earlier this year, I think the medical director for the township, the ambulance authority opened up, and I was thinking about applying for that, and I thought for a little bit too long. So I figured this is something that, something that I could contribute towards, and here I am.
Great, great. Carolyn, you'll be starting us off.
So in what ways do you see yourself contributing to them?
Either, I deal with ambulance personnel, day in and day out, thankfully, or, almost always, that's a positive experience. I appreciate what they do and how hard they work. So I think from that perspective, I have a little bit of background which I can, provide some perspective at some point in time, I'm assuming, which may be useful. I have contacts from that same perspective with multiple different EMS services, because we get, patients from Shaler, Ross, and having that sort of cross-sectional view sometimes can be helpful. Which otherwise sometimes if you're just exposed to one area, you may not have that broad or breadth of experience that you can get. I figured that might be something that might be useful.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Dr. Perry, are you familiar with the funding challenges that the McCants-Franklin Park Ambulance Authority currently
Only
has?
through what I have seen through the mailers. That's one of the reasons why I decided to be a member and then contribute for the last few years. But independent of that, not directly. I know it's an all-volunteer EMS primarily, and that funding is, as far as I know or I understand, is independently generated, or at least a major portion is. So I do understand that part, but most of what I know is what's publicly available. I don't have any insight beyond that.
Okay. Actually, it's a volunteer board, as you stated. It's actually the paid EMS that we have here in town. Do you have any direct experience in that firsthand delivery of those EMT services in your background, your medical background?
So I'm a critical care physician.
So you're in the
I-
ER.
So I'm not in the ER, I'm in the ICU.
ICU.
However, we're
That's the
frequently
difference.
called down
Okay.
to the ER to help when things get out of hand for the ER.
Okay.
So we provide a level of expertise that goes beyond what's available in the ER. We deal day in and day out with, the ambulance services, with Life Flight, and that staff.
On the receiving end, but you're not
We're sending
experienced-
patients, receiving patients, but not on the
transport and the actual delivery of the EMT services themselves.
Right.
Okay. Have you been in Pittsburgh long? Since you've lived here since
2009,
2009?
since 2009.
You relocated here to work at?
From upstate New York.
Oh,
I finished my
excellent.
training in 2009, and I first moved up to the northern suburbs. I've been here since.
Good choice.
Yes, yeah. I actually lived up here and for about 3.5, 4 years commuted all the way down to, I used to work out of Jefferson Hospital. So that was a little bit of something.
That's
That's a whole lot of
It's called
something.
dedication.
Yeah, it was interesting because Route 51, there is just no good way to get through that.
Well
So I was
said.
glad when this opportunity opened up at Passament.
Excellent.
And I've been here since the early January 2012.
Well, thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Knowing the financial problems with the ambulance authority, how would you deal with, taxes in connection with that?
So I'm a fiscal, I shouldn't say conservative, but I believe that we should use money in a reasonable manner, but still be able to provide services that are essential. Healthcare delivery, especially on the EMS side, is an essential service, which I think should be supported in whatever way it needs to be supported. If that means, more fundraising, more volunteer donation, or asking for corporate or otherwise volunteer donations, or judicious tax increase, well, it is what it is.
So you would be in favor of raising taxes if need be?
Only as a last resort, because I think EMS services are something that are extremely important, and that's not something that we can completely we can in one way or the other, get rid of and then, or compromise on. Just last week, I had a patient in the ICU that was rescued, it's been in the news, so I can talk about that. It's a guy who, had bystander CPR while jogging at North Park.
Mm-hmm.
I took care of him. And, bystander CPR is okay, but once EMS got there, he had care that he needed.
Right.
And, he's doing remarkably well. And to fathom that someone like that does not have the ability to get life-saving support
Without the ambulance.
without the ambulance services would be,
Mhm.
would be something that would not be something that I would think would be useful.
Okay, thank you.
Just following up on that remark, did the bystander in retrospect perform a critical function
Absolutely.
to save the guy's life if it hadn't been for the bystander?
Absolutely. I think the 3 women, and I read the article in, I forget which newspaper, which
Yeah.
local newspaper it was.
Well,
They
we
were
don't have
looking
too
for
many
the 3
choices around here.
There were 3 women. My joke in the ICU that week was, that's why I don't exercise too much now.
I worked as a liaison for I was a liaison for some period of time in the past with the ambulance authority, and they seem to always have the difficulty of, as I think Bill has already said, others have alluded to it, raising funds. And the difficulty in a couple different areas. One, currently there wasn't a taxation directed to all the residents, and then there was an effort made a couple of years ago to try to have the various municipalities, including our own, voluntarily up their ante, and that was unsuccessful in our case. But,
For fundraising?
yeah, fundraising in the sense of having the municipalities pony up money to better support the effort. And then trying to, the other aspect that was a constant problem, and I presume it still is, structuring the reimbursement in a way that the money can go to the ambulance authority, not to the individual. Because trying to get the individuals who get the money from their carriers has been
Directly
has
get
been a
the-
major problem. But that's something I would urge you to consider if you end up on the ambulance authority. And then, and I think that's really all I have, but glad to have you in the area. Hope you,
I'm glad to be here. We love living, I mean, I live 2.5 miles or 2-some miles away from here, and we love this area.
Great.
We're glad to hear it.
I have no questions?
Are there any improvements that you can just think of right off the bat that we could make there? Since you are exposed to several different ambulance services,
Well,
anything comes to mind?
I can tell you, I have not heard complaints.
Good to hear.
And I think, you know, the people that I've interacted with, in general, for most of the EMS services, and in particular with ours here, I have never had any complaint about. That's not to say that there's never an improvement that can be made. However, I think to that extent, you know, that a lot of it depends upon what, you know, knowing something, a service delivery. And I think knowing something from the inside, you're able to critique it a lot better than from looking out from outside. It's easy to criticize from the outside. It's a lot harder, like, you know, the challenges with money and everything, service delivery, those are a little different. You know, being fiscally conservative, I always end up figuring that, you know, you don't wanna pay for some things that you don't have to pay for. The government should be restricted, you know, things like that. However, something like healthcare, you just have to be a little, it has to be treated differently. And when I hear that somebody is not able to afford, or they go bankrupt because of a bill from the hospital, and sometimes, unfortunately, the ambulance charges can be significant too, but, you know, it's easy to criticize from the outside. However, when you look at something that you have to have somebody available, multiple people available, multiple ambulances and services available 24/7, 365, there's no Christmas, there's no New Year's Eve, there's somebody there on call. I know that feeling from the inside, you know, work in the ICU, but it's a lot easier to criticize from the outside, but then having to work from the inside, it's a lot different. And I think that perspective sometimes can help modulate what you do or what you can do.
I agree, thank you. Thank you so, any other questions? No whoops? Thank you so much for applying, we appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
Thomas?
Thank you.
Thank you. And nice to meet you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Mr. Mursky?
Yes.
So, hi, I know you heard it the first time, just for fairness, I always repeat for everyone, and that is, we have your application here, so if there's anything you'd like to add, you can do that, otherwise, we'll just go around and ask you whatever questions that we have.
Well, just in way of background, I've been an environmental professional for nearly 48 years. I've worked at the local level, regulatorily, at the federal level for US EPA, consulting recently. I've done a tremendous amount of work in research, development, and demonstration of environmental technologies. So I've got a wide spectrum of experience, and when I saw that there was potential need for someone to help with policy and technical issues at the MTSA, I thought, I'm retired now, so I have a lot more time to be able to donate to the community than I did in the past. So I'm here to offer my background and abilities, my 2 cents worth, if you would, to be able to contribute to that and to the community.
Carolyn?
Well, thank you, your resume is impressive. In what ways do you think, or would you like to be able to help out and give back?
I've done just about everything. There isn't too many things I haven't done. My recent work as a project manager working for AECOM and URS, I've had to build budgets, estimate work that needed to be done, and then bring it in on time for the clients that we had when I was working for EPA. Building budgets was another thing that we had to do and work along with that, plus oversight of regulations and programs. I oversighted programs for drinking water, groundwater, solid waste, and for a while worked with the construction grants program, as well as working on the political side of it, because I was working for the regional administrator for about a year and a half. So I got to mess around with members of Congress and their staffs as well. So I've done a lot. And I think if you're looking for someone who can bring a different perspective, a fresh set of eyes to a certain challenge, I could do it. I know the federal regulations with regard to water and solid waste specifically. Even wrote a chapter for the Academy of Certified Hazardous Materials Managers on the Safe Drinking Water Act a few years back, which is, that's a certification that environmental professionals are encouraged to get, so that they're familiar with regulations and all. So actually have at my fingertips a document that I can refer to that has information on environmental regulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Mursky, hi, Bill Kirk. Nice to
Yes,
meet
sir.
you. I have to take advantage of this opportunity with someone with your background on the regulatory side to ask you, in your opinion, what do you think over the next 5 years the biggest regulatory challenges our local sanitary authority here will be facing in your estimation?
Well, governments, regulatory government folks, in order to justify their ongoing existence with a lot of times, they're always looking at various challenges in the environment. And they'll be cranking things down. They'll find our ability to be able to see contaminants has changed tremendously over my career. When I first started working for EPA, the methods that we were using were downright crude, and now we have analytical methods that can see parts per quadrillion, which is mind-boggling when you start thinking of what that is. 1 part in a billion, 1 part in trillion, 1 part per quadrillion, and that they can actually analyze down to those levels with accuracy is really something. I don't want to bore you with some of that background on it, but I mean, I can if you're interested. But primarily, that's what's going to happen as the analytical techniques expand and new challenges are found with regard to issues on both ends, on drinking water and on the sewage side. They're going to be looking for ways that they can crank down on that, and then you, of course, have to come up with analytical technical methods to be able to respond to that, to be able to treat to levels for sewerage and discharge standards into waters of the Commonwealth, waters of the United States. So there's always that particular issue that's at hand there.
I think you're spot on. I think that regulating to that finite level
Yeah, well,
is exactly our biggest challenge,
As-
meeting that compliance.
right, because as I said, the analytics before, we were using a meat cleaver, and now they've got a very fine scalpel that they're using on a lot of that. And when they find it, and they go to try to regulate it, there's a group of chemicals Right now, fluorinated chemicals that were used in extinguishing, for fire extinguishing, that seem to have gotten into everything. It's a big challenge right now, and the environmental area does not know how to deal with it. Because they can see it down to part per quadrillion levels, and that's what the regulatory side's going down to. But probably that, and a lot of things in the way of testing requirements. I gotta believe that's gonna be cranked up. And the way it usually happens, it starts at the federal level. The federal level will set the standards. The standards will be given to the states for implementation, and then and a lot of times the locals be given to it, and a lot of times, especially in the wastewater area, that's handed to the municipal government because that's who owns the sewers. Doesn't always happen like that. In the drinking water side, because you have privately owned water suppliers who are out there, whose pipes are always breaking in the South Hills. But there's a lot of challenges out there, and it's always changing. And the idea is you have to continue to have somebody who's looking at that, someone who should be at the bow of the ship and making sure that you can see what's happening in the future and try to anticipate that, because you're probably going to have to deal with that at some point in time.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tom.
Your knowledge and your background are extremely impressive.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that. Can we narrow down your broad knowledge to what issues do you think the MTSA just for McCandless would be facing?
Well, most treatment systems have a challenge with disposal of solids. Treatment of the solids, dewatering, sewage sludge, where to dispose of it, how to dispose of it, what's in it for its disposal, and disposal costs is going to be a big one. I mean, I was regional director at EPA Region 3 for solid waste, and that included sewage solids that needed to be disposed of. There's a lot of different ways of dealing with that, most of which are pretty expensive because you're dealing with a lot of stuff that has a lot of things in it that have been flushed down the toilet or gotten into by industrial wastewater that was snuck into the system. That's one of the biggest problems that I see is both inflow infiltration into the sewage to increase the amount of water that needs to be treated that isn't metered. So that shows up, and things that show up in there that aren't supposed to be in there. So the things I would be watching out for is who's tied into the system, what are they discharging, are we reviewing their discharge permits into the system to make sure that they're actually testing for and finding what has been released into the wastewater system, because you need to know that on this end from both discharge of the water into the waterways and the disposal of solids. That has to go to a landfill, which is charging, and if you find stuff in it, they'll either not accept it or you have to send it to another landfill, which is going to increase your disposal costs.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm Bill McKim. Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you.
And I, as much as I could, read your qualifications, which are pretty impressive. But it struck me that you were there at the beginning, almost, perhaps literally at the beginning of the EPA. Were you pretty darn close?
It started a few years before I got with them. It started in 1972, if memory serves me, and I was.
But you graduated. One of your degrees was from 1970. Was that?
Yeah, my
Yeah.
bachelor's degree was in
Yeah.
1970.
Yeah. But in any event, it seems to me that
I was there for the first Earth Day.
Yeah, right. there's a great deal of overlap, I would think, between the sanitary sewer considerations and the EPA with things like, particularly in the area of solid waste and water. So, have you had any opportunity to really consider, well, one other aspect, I think our municipality and MTSA, which includes more than just McCandless, interfaces with Alcosan in the Allegheny County. Have you given any thought to the issues that arise in that context?
Well, there's a lot of issues that arise in that context, and how municipal governments are dealing with them. Regionally, it has to be a regional answer to a lot of these things, and the interface between MTSA and Alcosan and others, because they're all mutual problems. Every municipality has the same challenges when it comes to dealing with sewerage and disposal of solids that come of that. The more regionalization that can occur, your ability to be able to go out and find mutual solutions is going to be more cost effective for everyone in the long run.
Well, correcting problems from the past, that's what I always thought.
Yeah,
was the
well,
biggest thing.
and the city of Pittsburgh's got its challenges because everything's there.
Combined sewage overflow and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the regional administrator's staff when we were sending nasty grams to the city of Pittsburgh about their combined sewers.
Yeah.
But every major city in the east of the Mississippi has got the same issue. The problems with combined sewers, it goes without saying. We did a lot of work too with, my regional office had to deal with the Chesapeake Bay situation and the eutrophication of the Chesapeake Bay, and that's been a problem. And a lot of it's non-point source. Agricultural issues, because you have feedlots and manure running off of that. I don't think we have that challenge here as much as they do in the eastern part of the state, but there's probably some non-point source issues that could be pointed to. And I'm certain that if there are any in the area here, we could certainly find ways that we could point that out and then get the powers that be primarily and paid up to pay attention to and respond to.
Well, thank you very much for your consideration of our questions, and best wishes to you as you proceed.
Thank you.
Very impressive, but no questions from me.
I think we have to hire you as a consult after all that.
Yeah.
information.
I was thinking
My
it's-
God. Thank you.
Well, I
sir.
do that on the side, so. I do
Just
act-
in case.
I do
No
ad
advertising
hoc
there.
consulting. No, it's true. I retired from AECom this past January, and I'm working for a small company that actually does something. We were talking about sewage overflows. They have a product that actually, it's absorbent, it's a natural absorbent material that works very aggressively on petroleum and other types of problems. If there's runoff problems with petroleum, I'm the guy to talk to, because I know how to do it and where to do it. And I could spend another 20 minutes just talking about that.
Okay. Thank you, we appreciate it.
That's good.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Well,
Thank you for all the knowledge.
but if it isn't wasn't.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Marcia? Hello.
Hello, good
Nice,
evening, everyone.
you've been
Are
here
you impressed we're right on time?
I
Aren't you
waited.
impressed?
No, we're 2 minutes late.
that's,
And Steve, you didn't have to say that.
So let me, just for the record, I know you've interviewed before, but just to be fair for everyone, is, we have your, application here, so if there's something else you wanna add, you can do that, otherwise we'll go around and just ask a question.
I think pretty much everyone knows me here. 40-plus years of experience. I know I'm only 25, but 40-plus years' experience in healthcare and billing and compliance. I want to help out in the community. I'm semi-retired now, and I've been involved going to meetings. I've been going to the ambulance authority meetings for a while. Actually, at Councilman Kirk's suggestion, and so I had an idea of some of the challenges that they had, and so I have a better idea of the challenges and the task at hand.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any ideas of how you would want to address the issues?
Oh, I have, I do believe that, and once I can get a look at the bylaws, I think the authority needs to be expanded by inclusion of the 3 municipalities that we service that aren't part of the board, and that's Bradford Woods, Franklin Park, Pine, and Marshall. I think that hopefully representation at the table from those communities will only help to strengthen the board. I also believe that the authority meetings should be publicized through Savvy Citizen or some way. It was kind of hard to find out when they were meeting, and I went and they went, oh, the meeting was canceled, and so I think if you open it up and more people know, then if you need more people involved in what's been happening. They've got a lot of they have tremendous financial challenges with the way reimbursements are today, and with the cost of technology. I mean, the EMS workers are highly credentialed, very qualified, but you have to pay a price for that to get that experience and to get that level of expertise. So I think the more people that we can try to include in the process, while we work with all the other communities, will help to strengthen. This is a necessary service. We need to ensure that the ambulance authority remains viable. What do we do if we don't have an ambulance authority? That's tragic. We have to. So we need to bolster it, whether it be financially, or whether it be through volunteerism, whether it be through ensuring that the billings are accurate, and I have no reason to believe they're not. But just to make sure that, from what I see, they are a pretty well-oiled machine. And I think they run very well. But are there any other economies of scale that we need, that we can do?
Thank you.
Sure.
Marcia, thanks for coming back. Because we recently, one of the folks on the authority that resigned had a strong financial background like you, very much like you, and so they're lacking that now. Have you been to the meetings where they discussed the transition for the payroll system?
Yes.
What do you think of that?
I think, I heard the proposal, was at the meeting when they were doing the proposal, and that it's taking them longer to implement because they need to develop all these schedules. I think they're still looking for a January 1st go live. I do believe going with the company, and I think there can be some cost savings there eventually. The initial startup obviously is going to be a little bit more expensive, but when I heard the proposal, it certainly made sense from a financial perspective, eventual financial perspective.
I really like your idea of expanding the authority's
I think that's
participation. It's absolutely critical, providing services to these municipalities, and they don't have any skin.
Yes.
Let me ask you, have you had a chance, or has there been discussions at the authority, is there the ability for the authority to assess some type of a base fee to ensure that our communities have an ambulance service going forward, whether they use it or not?
A per capita?
A base fee from the authority itself, the way that our sanitary and our water services assess a base fee for your residents, you know, because they're required you know, as you said,
Right.
for life itself. Do you know if if they're within their bounds there to do that?
I don't believe that's been discussed. I know that they had mentioned at some of the one of the meetings where Franklin, I believe it's Franklin Park, is giving them a per capita. And I know that's something that
It's,
really has been getting some pushback, but they've decided, and if you read the papers a few months ago, Ross Westview went to all of their communities and I think asked for triple what they were getting from the communities because they're in such financial need. The current ambulance authority, our ambulance authority is not to that, thankfully not to that magnitude of being, I hate to use the word desperate, but being desperate. But I'm glad they're addressing it right now, because we don't have to do a knee jerk. We don't have to do something that say, we gotta do it today or we're closed tomorrow. So I think it's very, a good thing from the board to take a look at it right now and say, we need to start doing this now, we need to look at our future. So, so that's a good part. We're not in that situation where Ross Rescue is, but something has to be done. And I don't know enough at this point in time to know what the solution is. As with just about everything else in life, there is not one answer. You know, it's gonna be a bifurcated approach at a minimum. There's going to be a lot of different ways, hopefully, that we can tool things. There's never one answer.
but you know the clock's ticking,
The clock is
and we
ticking.
have 4 or 5 years
Yes,
to figure it
Yes.
out.
yes, the clock is ticking.
Thanks for your participation. I have no further questions.
Thanks.
Marcia, because of the financial problems with the ambulance authority, would you be in favor of raising taxes to help them? Or what is your thought on it, I guess I should say?
If you ask probably the average citizen of any of the municipalities, they probably already believe that the townships pay and fund them to begin with.
You're probably right.
So I am not in favor of raising taxes. I don't think anybody wants to do that. Is there some way, and I know that there's been some in-kind, and there has been some financial assistance from McCandless as is from Franklin Park, and I think Pine, I think this, one of the other communities, and I don't know which one, has given financial assistance. I know McCandless has done some with the trucks and some of the other things. Obviously, do not want to raise taxes. I don't think anybody does, but is there some other unique way that we can try to boost them up without doing that?
Okay, thank you.
Marcia, nice to see you again.
Good to see you.
Looking at your resume and your experience, I think you really do have a great background to interface with the kind of issues that the ambulance authority presents. It seems to me that there's a revenue side, not to be too simplistic, and a cost side. And I think that the revenue side is what the problem is. My impression's always been that the ambulance authority has had a pretty reasonable approach toward their, and a sound approach toward their controlling their expenses, but trying to come up with money somewhere. I think that's the real key. And you've touched on a couple of them already. I know some municipalities have voluntarily assumed some responsibility beyond what they would be obliged to do. But I think that's really the problem. The collection side of it, and I'm not sure that there's a magic bullet there either. You know, but a lot of money, when the financial people would give reports, they would pinpoint how much money they're losing by not being able to collect money from the.
Yes,
And,
that's an issue that is a problem, not just with this ambulance authority,
Right.
but every ambulance authority.
structure, it's the way the structure's set up legally from Harrisburg.
Right, well, and it's a matter of accepting assignment, and it's a
Yeah.
matter of how they get their payments, and, you know, I don't know who we have contracts with, what other insurers we have contracts with, if that's something that's feasible to get contracts with some of these insurance companies, so that the money can come directly to the authority and not to the
Yeah.
subscriber who says, oh, Christmas came early, by getting a check. I'd like to take a look, if I were to report at all the contracts that we have and what we can do. Obviously, there's nothing you can do with Medicare, but some of the other contracts. With the increase in the number of senior care facilities that is coming to McCandless, that's gonna put a big stress on the ambulance authority. And so, and I know that they've already spoken to some of them, with the new hospital coming up from AHN, there's going to be transfers to the north side. If we're gonna be doing that, then, it's just more stress to them. Are we gonna have to hire more people to accommodate that? So then you have more expense there. So I'm not sure, Councilman, what the revenue, from what I hear, it sounds like they do a good job in collections. But,
Not good enough.
well, not good enough because of people who get the check and pocket the money. And so, the only thing I can think about that is that, what insurance do they have, and do we have contracts with it? Is it feasible? Can't contract with every insurer, but if we have the big ones, the Highmarks and the UPMCs, in addition to the Medicare checks will come to the authority, but everything else,
Marcia, thank you very much for your response, your thoughtful responses. I do appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
Good to hear.
How many meetings have you gone to?
I have been going since the spring.
Okay. And how many times have you applied for this position?
This is my third time.
It seems like you're very serious about wanting to help this
For the ambulance authority, this is the third?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, I knew it was
Thank you for your
multiple.
perseverance.
Thank you.
Is David here?
I'm not David.
No?
I had to check. Yeah, I know, I know.
Nice to see you again.
It's in your contract.
And right on time, too. I just must say.
Yeah.
I mean, getting good on it.
We've had enough practice.
We've had a lot of practice, right?
A lot of positions.
That doesn't mean,
I'd like to call to order the Town of McCandless Agenda Review Meeting for November 18th, 2019. First, let's review the tentative business meeting agenda, which you have. A couple of things, I think, you can see we have committee nominations under B, under zoning committee. I think we can add the MTSA under there, as well as the ambulance authority, because we finished those tonight. So we
Okay.
can do those, that's okay? We can get those out of the way. And you have a resolution too that needs to be added?
Yeah, working with our engineer today on getting a permit application in to PennDOT for the crossing and flashing lights on Cumberland Road at the school. It's been an ongoing project. They have made revisions to the permit drawing plans. They have a application completed for our signature, and the last piece of the puzzle is this resolution requesting that the permit be issued. Would like to add that under new business so that we can keep that project moving.
Any other changes that anyone sees that needs to be done for the agenda business? Okay. Moving on to liaison reports. If you filed a report and have something to add as we go down through it, just add that, but I think we do have reports for most things that are in your folder or in your hand or on the website. Planning Commission.
Oh, go ahead.
Planning Commission and Zoning Hearing Board. Greg is not able to make this evening, but those, you have those minutes and the Zoning Hearing Board, 2 Zoning Hearing Board decisions that you have already, the material that you have. McCandless Sanitary Authority, anything to add?
No, unless there are any questions.
Congratulations on your Grow Grant Award.
Thank you very
Very
much,
nice.
yes.
Very nice. McCandless Franklin Park Ambulance, any additional? We got that tonight.
Nothing further to add, except that the next meeting will be on November 28th.
Okay, and can we put that on our calendar and get that out on Savvy Citizen too, if that's not out there yet? Those are public meetings, right, Bill?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, our calendar that we have and get out on Savvy, in case anyone wants to attend those. Library?
There is not a report in there. I did call to see about it, and she said they were just in the process of printing it up, so we.
Send it out when,
Yeah,
just when you
right,
get
that's
it.
what I asked her to.
Perfect, okay. North Hills Council of Governments?
Nothing much new. We had the final meeting, which was the dinner, and really didn't discuss anything new other than we met the interim manager until we find a replacement for Wayne's retirement.
Okay. Nothing on Joint Rec, I'm assuming?
Nope.
Okay. MIDA, Bill?
There's a meeting that's been scheduled for November 21st coming up here concerning, there's no financial impact upon the MIDA, but Robert Morris University needs to make an amendment to their agreement with Laurel Capital Corporation. And the MIDA has been asked to have a special meeting, which we're having on November 21st, to provide authorizations required by that request. It has no financial impact on MIDA.
Do you mind filing a report after that? Just let us know how it goes.
Yes, I will.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll forget by next month
No, I
to
understand.
ask you. Volunteer firefighters?
Our meeting is set for December 10th, at 7
Okay.
o'clock.
Okay. North Pittsburgh Community Development Corporation? Bill?
Nothing.
Okay. Heritage Center?
Okay, you probably saw in your packet, but Mr. Burgess did send the information from Wilson McCandless, which includes 2 portraits, books, and other personal items that will be on display at the Heritage Center.
All right. Congratulations too on the committee's success with its fundraising this year.
Yes, they've done
way up.
They've done very well, and they already have some things planned for the spring.
Great, we can't wait to hear about them. Probably not much on Community Day yet.
Nope.
Yeah,
Okay.
starting in January.
Yeah, starting in January. As far as EAC, we are working on some new, getting some ideas for some additional projects. So if anyone has some suggestions or ideas on things that you think would be good for the EAC to work on, just get those to me and, or Jason, who's the chair, whichever you like. Personnel?
No meeting yet, we're trying to get one set up, so
Okay.
hopefully soon.
Tech Committee?
Notes were submitted from our November 6th meeting. Are there any questions from any members?
Can we put a glossary with those? Do you mind?
Glossary of terms, so
Yeah,
noted.
okay, thanks, appreciate you.
Maybe we all need to go to that meeting.
I know.
It doesn't help.
Oh, it doesn't, okay, good.
Okay, a glossary would be nice then.
Yes, yes, I agree.
Okay, junior council member report.
I went really fast this week. My report this week is on the ambulance authority. So I think it was the last one of these meetings was when it was announced that the deficit for this year would be around $220,000. And then at last week's meeting, I think Councilman Kirk brought up that the $64,000 allotted by the town of McCandless would likely not be enough for the ambulance committee this year. So in my report, I basically recommended that to increase the budget and maybe even start directly funding the service, because right now we just get reimbursed for the money that we send to them, and it's not actually funded by tax dollars, because of just how important the service is. That I think they get 3,000 calls on average annually. So the service is used by a lot of people. So having it go away would be a serious detriment to the community. So I feel that it's important enough that maybe direct government funding is now necessary.
All right, thank you. Would it be possible to get these the Thursday before this meeting, so we have a little more time to read them?
Yeah.
And not be so kind of rushed in
Yeah,
the
I can do
meeting?
that.
That would be terrific, if you just submit those to Marie so they can be in our folder. If you take the time to prepare it, we'd like to take the time to read it carefully.
All right.
Thank you. Any questions about that at all? Activity Advisory Committee?
The committee did meet, they will be, and you have a copy of the notes in your folder. Wanted to just highlight one thing. They had a very productive conversation, and they're already looking ahead into 2020 into ways that they can engage with the community. One of the ideas that seemed to take hold for them was maybe host an ice cream social in early June. So we'll be putting together a project form for that. We're just trying to finalize the date on that.
I also noticed in their minutes that they put out a call for volunteers. I would like to suggest that the people who applied to that committee but were not selected could possibly be contacted and let them know that there are volunteer positions available.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if they've contacted that whole list of
We have that list together.
organizations
Yeah,
to,
we got that back out.
to contact.
Mr. Kirk mentioned that to me
Okay,
as well.
yes,
so.
perfect. Because if they need volunteers, it's a good place to start
Yeah.
there. Okay, that takes us to review of the budget programs.
Chairman, while Tricia is trying to get the rest of these copied, can we move ahead to the other items so that we give her a couple more minutes?
Absolutely. Do you want to go down to mine and then yours?
Yes.
Just because we're in, okay. One thing is, I'm very happy to announce that we have received 3 successful grant applications. McCandless, Ingomar, Franklin Park Little League was awarded $250,000 from the GEDF. That is the Gaming Economic Development Fund of Allegheny County for renovations to Wall Park in McCandless. So that's really gonna upgrade that park very nicely.
Those who don't know, it's on Slope Road, because when you say Wall Park, there are a lot of people who don't know.
They're looking for
Park.
Wall Road?
No, it's on Slope Road.
I know,
Oh, what did you just ask me?
Are they looking for Wall
Wall
Road?
Road, I didn't hear the first part of the question,
Okay.
sorry about that.
That's okay. McCandless also received 2 other grants from the Multimodal Transportation Fund from the PA Department of Community and Economic Development. We got $278,810 for the Grubbs Road Sidewalk Connectivity Project. And we got $406,084 for the Route 19 Sidewalk Extension Project. For those of you whose math's a little bit slow, that's $934,858. Well, that applause goes to, of course, our administration who applied for these grants, and also to Senator Williams and Speaker Turzai for their support for these applications. Bob, John, Bruce for writing these. They will significantly affect our pedestrian mobility projects and our recreation in our town. So thank you for those. That was awesome. this, for council, just make sure that you, are torn between, the emergency services dinner and the sanitary authority dinner. Get those RSVPs in there.
Make your
We should-
choice.
We should split it up like separated
Share
parents.
Yeah,
who
half
goes
go
where.
to one and half go to the other.
I also want to remind everybody, a Small Business Saturday is November 30th, so please shop local. That is all of mine. Do you want to go to yours, town
Sure.
manager?
You've all received a copy of my manager's report. Just wanted to highlight a couple of items for you. One important aspect of community life in the town is that the small format hospital is tentatively planned to be opened December 12th. So that's a milestone for us. Kim stole my thunder on the multimodal grant
I
applications.
couldn't help it.
We did hold a pre-construction meeting on the Brittany Place Stream Bank project this morning. We may make a few small changes, including work on Mr. Riley's side of the stream to better address some of the concerns that Mr. Andra had.
Bob, I just thought, that I had received a notice of the ribbon cutting for the hospital, and that might be worth mentioning. I didn't see that in your report, maybe it hadn't occurred.
Yeah.
But 11 o'clock
On the 12th?
on the 12th, yes, sir.
Thank you. And also wanted to mention again that we've received word from PennDOT. County has actually concurred with us now regarding the placement of a four-stop sign at the intersection of West Ingomar Road, Highland Road, and that will be installed shortly. There is action to be taken on behalf of the town so that that can be enforced. And that completes my report.
Okay, are we ready for,
11 o'clock.
come on up there.
11 o'clock.
Do you have any report?
No, just for town attorney's report, you all should have the printed report.
I just thought I'd ask what she said.
You all have these.
Did we get this already?
We-
There's
That
some
was-
There's a few changes that we made to reflect the grants.
Trying not to spit on it. I know.
Is that after me? That's pretty humorous.
Oh my God.
He asked the applicant. Do you have any
Guys around?
I'm gonna miss this.
This is a big spreadsheet.
I said, well, we have another one, we go to.
I gotta make it big enough for our old eyes to read it.
Just take the one on top, right?
Yeah,
I didn't know if there's something.
no, they're all.
Okay.
We're wallpapering, we're wallpapering the town hall.
Sorry.
I don't think my phone is big enough to take care of this.
I have one for her.
Oh,
Sorry. Yep, got it, thanks.
Notes?
I was wondering if you were gonna do that.
This is the one that we did.
This is this week, is this for? Okay.
No, this one's for last week. The one they gave us last week's for this week.
I think that's one. Now I gotta check it, I don't believe it. I have to watch you.
Okay.
Okay.
Everybody have enough paper?
Yeah.
we have anything?
Okay. All right, we're starting with,
410.
We'll be starting. Police. These, what you see on the screen are the areas that we will be addressing this evening. The budget as prepared keeps the current complement of police that we are currently on the payroll in the same ranking, or the same ranks that we have had. And there are, some of the highlights include monies under public safety equipment for ongoing supplies, ongoing replacement of tasers, equipment such as sign batteries. One of the things we've included or increased substantially is computer and IT expenditures, including the purchase of software and a new file server. Now the software just upgrades the operating systems in the current PCs and the vehicles. We are replacing 3 marked vehicles, including conversion costs. And under public safety capital outlays, we are including the cost to replace all of the portable radios that are outdated and they're not serving the department well in terms of some of the reception that the officers can get in areas such as low-lying areas or within buildings. We feel that it's imperative that they have that quality equipment so that they can do their job more safely and more effectively. The other item, as I mentioned in my update to you regarding the meetings that we had on pension valuation, we're proposing to increase the municipal contribution to the pension fund so that we smooth out that substantial increase that will occur with the 2019 valuation. The valuation, assuming the new
Bless you.
Yeah, the new valuation tables include changes in the mortality tables because policemen are living longer than they used to following retirement, and also the interest rate assumptions have been reduced somewhat to reflect what we feel the market will be moving towards. So that increase from one year to the next could be over $200,000, but because it's a new valuation year, we can smooth that transition out. So we'd like to add $100,000 for this year and then another $100,000 next year to get us up to that full amount.
Have we taken any consideration, a while back, we discussed slightly the possibility of an assistant chief. Have we taken into consideration anywhere, any of that?
This budget did not do that.
Okay.
Of course, that's always a matter for discussion purposes.
Right, but I didn't know.
Always
if you
seemed like
had-
an unnecessary
With the,
position to me.
with the other changes
Yeah.
that are occurring, I wasn't sure what would be best at this point.
Thank you.
Chief, anything that you wanted to add,
Regarding assistant chief,
or
No, just the general.
just
just regarding the radios, if there were any questions, they are dated. Sergeant Madden tells me that they are approaching, the end of their life. We officers have great difficulty transmitting and receiving reception in many areas of the town. They have tested 2 new of these Motorola radios for 90 days now, and they're outperforming the current radios. Yeah, they're outperforming them, we'll leave it at that. More rugged, these are just some points that he's made to me. In case there were any questions, we could go into greater detail about that. And the tasers, that cost, I believe, is maybe, Tricia could say, been spread over years, but we do have 8 new ones to put into service with the, I think, the 20 we already have, so that each officer would carry their own taser, rather than this program where we're swapping them out and changing shifts and whatnot.
419 crossing guards on pages 43 and 44, if you were trying to follow in the main document. Keeps the complement of 6 crossing guards and assumes continued 50% contribution from the school district. So there's no significant changes to that that line item. For 26 recycling, on pages 45 through 47. Again, we're reflecting the continuation of the current trash recycling yard waste collection under the current contract with Waste Management. The budget also includes costs associated with the Public Works Department completing its annual leaf pickup and composting program. Again, in the fall, including cost of yard bags and advertising that we do. Another portion of the salary line item is costs associated with John Bajarski's position, providing information on the program as well as a bit of our receptionist. The operating supplies include continued replacement and updating of trash carts, that inventory, and charges through the COG for the leaf composting.
Bob, I have a question. Are you ready for questions?
Sure.
Thank you. Sometime back, there was a discussion, maybe more than one discussion, about the changes in what Waste Management or any other collector was going to be able to take. I think glass was the big issue.
Yes.
When is that, are those changes going to be implemented?
For the Town of McCandless contract, we were very specific in the items that could be taken. So Waste Management is obligated to continue to recycle glass under our current agreement. So unless we change that language in the agreement, they will continue to recycle glass.
When is their contract renewed then, I guess?
They're in 2 years, 3 years?
Okay, thank you.
I have another question
Okay.
for Mark. Mark, we have a particular schedule for the snow removal, right? When they come around scrape the roads. Okay, there's a schedule for that, right? Do we have one for the leaf pickup?
We do.
There's a particular.
There's a route that each one of the trucks follows.
Okay, all right. Only because I've had questions that, people say they haven't been in my street, but, whatever, they don't like the time.
As I brought up last Monday night, it's, the speed that we can move in is totally dependent on the leaves that come down and the weather that allows folks to put leaves out. The last couple of weeks, the weather's been either rain or snow, so there was a brief slowdown, let's say, in the amount of leaves out. This past weekend was pretty decent, and if you got around today and looked a little bit, there's piles out there that are well renewed again. And a lot of the roads that I looked at today, we had just gotten cleaned up last week, and it doesn't look like we were over there.
Okay, well, I just needed some answers from people when they called.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add to that? What is the, under ideal conditions, what's the cycle time to collect all the leaves in the can?
About
with
once a
those
week.
trucks?
If the leaves come down over a period of time, if it's spread out a little bit, the weather's decent enough, the trucks can get leaves out, we should be able to get around once a week to each house.
I agree. I
Once-
agree that's what we should have, and because of the factors of weather and things, I think going forward, we should be looking at building some time into that schedule, adding some resources temporarily as necessary to make that 1 week. Because unfortunately, because of the weather and other factors, I rarely see them getting picked up weekly, rarely. And that's a real problem, and I think it's
And I
a,
think that's where the
it's
question
a
is.
resource problem. And I think that we can pick up our trash weekly and have no problems with that. And if we pick the leaves up, I think it would resolve a whole host of issues that they're creating now, from flooding to dangerous conditions. I certainly don't want to see sidewalks ever blocked by leaves, because we're not picking them up weekly. So,
I just suggested that maybe we post like some update weekly, which streets have been done or which ones are next on the list to be done. So that
The
they
difficulty
can
with
see
that
it.
is, for instance, today, we have the 3 vacuum trucks that are the cream of the crop as far as trying to collect volumes of leaves. The guys got out this morning, and a little bit after 8 o'clock this morning, one of the trucks came back in. One of the hydraulic motors that powers the boom that picks the leaves up broke. And so that machine was down for, I think, probably at least half of the day. Well, they tore it apart, got a new motor put on it, and fortunately, we had one in stock. But it still takes time to take the machine apart and get the thing back on again, and get it back out on the road again. So, you know, with those 3 trucks, and we have 2 of the older tow-behind machines that we're still using. They've been out for 2 weeks now. But they are horribly slower than the 3 big trucks. So even though they're out there every day, they're not, the boxes that collect the leaves are much smaller than the trucks, so they load up quicker, takes them longer to get to and from the dump to get back again. And, you know, there's a whole host of things that slow the whole process down. And one of the other things now, the underside of the piles have been soaked with rain. The cold weather comes in and they freeze. And now you've got another, you know, they can pick them up, the machine will suck them up, but it slows them down trying to pick up that stuff that's frozen in the road.
With the announcement last week, on the open discussion page, did that help at all? Did you notice any?
I've actually seen a number of places where folks have kept the leaves on the grass instead of putting the bulk of the pile on the street. And it helps because the leaves don't freeze to the road when they're on the grass.
Right, and they're not trampled down by the cars.
They're not pounded in by the cars.
Nope.
I'd also like to remind everyone that this is a very lovely service that the town
Right.
extends,
One of our most
because
popular.
it's very popular, and I have to tell you, my friends that live in neighboring communities are very envious of this service. So it is a very nice one, not a cheap one, but a very nice one. And then gardeners get to really reap the benefits of this in the spring when the pile is out there. So it's a nice service coming and going.
And when they come around, they do a good job.
Thank you.
4:30, Public Works Administration. Again, no changes in staffing in this area. It includes the superintendent, the administrative assistant, foreman, and assistant foreman, as well as the benefit cost for the crew in general. The capital expenditures for this item, we had listed originally the dump truck under this item, but we moved that to capital in the original document. But that is under the capital program. So this currently includes a replacement for the superintendent's vehicle, a fleet truck, looking at alternatives to the boom mower and some other miscellaneous equipment that we would be using.
Why would the truck be moved to capital improvement?
This is the large
The-
piece of the purchase.
How
Okay,
large
so
the
it's-
purchase was
So
and the
even though it's
type.
not actually a capital improvement, it's a dollar value that moves it to there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what is that dollar value?
It's 180.
No,
Oh,
this is
sorry.
180, but when do you decide that it goes?
Anything over 50,000 is considered, whether it's recurring or to that nature.
Okay.
And I think the lifespan of the truck.
We also move the
Plays
plow
into
and the spreader because they go with the truck.
Okay.
Bob, question on page 49 of the,
Mhm.
everybody's looking at that. On the adopted budget for 2019 was 1.66, and then the projected actual was 1.310. And then it went back up for 2020, projecting 1.630. What was going on there that caused that about a $300,000 fluctuation?
Has to do with the purchase of the vehicles that is the biggest.
I believe the boom mower that was going to be purchased,
Was not purchased.
that was not purchased.
Okay.
Remember that
Yeah.
Right.
thing that
Right.
goes over the hill?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
I
didn't-
got you. I understand.
We've been still trying to figure out an alternative to replacing that expensive mower with using something else that maybe is environmental friendly. We're still working on that, I think.
I think you moved the money that was for this year's truck, you moved it to next year also. Because the truck that we ordered, and we took delivery of the chassis back in February, we probably are not gonna see that truck until March or April of next year.
We'll do that in a budget amendment in March if we need to do that. We're worried about the potential of needing to move some budget money into next year if the truck doesn't come in time for
Okay.
this year.
So that's the 350,000 capital purchases I see that were not spent in 2019, or we're projecting not to spend.
We're projecting not to spend during 2019, but
I don't see it in the, given what you just described in 2020's capital of 225,000,
We
I don't
moved-
see it.
we moved the one truck to the capital improvement fund. So we're gonna pay for it out of a different fund.
Okay, so the whole 350's been moved.
Yeah.
It didn't go away, we're still gonna
It
do
did
it
not
best.
go away, we're just spending it slightly
You're
differently.
So
cataloging
we
how
still
you're
have it,
spending it.
yes.
Okay,
That's what you're saying, we still have it.
Yes.
And- yes.
because I'm looking for another leaf truck in here somewhere, is what I'm getting at.
Should be under Fund
All right.
18.
When you find it, let me know.
I'm trying real hard.
Just tell them, all right, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions on 430? 431, street cleaning. This is no real significant change other than just addressing contractual increases and things. It's,
May I just ask again, I'm sorry, I'm asking my questions, but how often do the streets get cleaned?
We generally get them, we start in March, we generally wind up about end of May or maybe mid-June to get them done. And then we put it away unless there's a storm or something, and we have to go out and do it again
So then you just do it that one
once
time?
a year.
Okay.
Can I ask, Mark, what happened in 2018 and 19 where it almost doubled? From looking at this, I got the impression that somebody said, oh, we should be cleaning them more often in 2019.
We did, the DEP, of course, would like to see us do it twice a year. Under the MS4 program, it would be a benefit if we could get around to do it twice a year, but with the time constraints that we have with other work that goes on, I haven't been able to detail somebody to be on that machine to get it done twice a year, which is why we get it done once, the entire town, and then after that, if there's a storm or something, and we know that there's places that need cleaned up, he goes out and does the roads.
Okay.
The aim is to do them twice a year, is that right? Because I noticed in the write-up here, it says the one objective is to make sure the catch basins are clean when you hit them at the, in late fall. You're right.
Well, that's, the leaf machines take care of that. The leaf machines make sure that the leaves are cleaned off the catch basins.
So what he's saying, this is redundant, they don't have to run street
Well,
sweepers through, or?
it's, again, it depends on, like this year, we had several storms that brought things that we've never seen down the road before to clog basins up. We sent the machine out and he cleans that stuff up. So it's, you know, DEP would like to see us, it's not a mandate, but they would like to see us sweep every street at least twice a year. If they had their way, they'd probably every quarter, they would like to see us sweep, but that's just not practical.
So what do we end up doing, it once or twice?
One complete time.
One complete time, and then it's catch as catch can, depending upon what's required. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on 431? .432, ice and snow control. The largest item in this, from a salary standpoint, from a general operational standpoint, things, number of tons of salt were remaining consistent. Pricing is consistent, fairly consistent for the coming year. The biggest change in this is that we're proposing under the general fund a capital outlay of 2 pre-treatment spreaders to be used as part of our snow and ice control. This will be an effort. This would be an effort on our part to go out ahead of a storm. You'll see in other communities or on state roads, you'll see 4 or 5 spray lines of brine mixture that would be on the roads a day or so ahead of a storm. And this enables, it buys the public works crew time to get out. And in smaller snow events, it will address those light snows where we wouldn't have to necessarily go out and treat, that we may have had to put salt down. The cost is about 1/5 of the cost of one round of snow or salting for us, and it makes for a safer traveled road and, in my mind, a better service to the community. We're proposing 2 because of the number of lane miles that we have. These 2 units together will send 2 men out and during the normal work day, and it will take the entire day to pre-treat the town with those 2 units. But in the long run, it will be a cost saver to the town.
And it's proactive. It's nice. I like it.
Any other questions on snow removal? 433 traffic control. This will involves just the maintenance of the current number of signals that we have. We have applied for a number of different grants, and we're waiting to hear whether we would do any upgrades. Obviously, if we do get those grants, that we would do a budget amendment during 2020 to address that. But at this point, this is a sort of a steady-as-you-go budget in terms of salaries and operational costs.
I have been aware of some problems we've had with some of our more high-tech signalization. I'm fine with the steady-as-you-go for now. Our tech committee will be looking into some of those opportunities where we can improve service on that signalization. It may require, may make some impact on this at some point, but I think we have those intelligence signals to mitigate congestion and, improve quality of life and reduce pollution. I think we need to maximize that, so.
And
I don't think this takes that into account at this point.
we've been relying on grants to provide those kinds of upgrades and maintenance. And if we're not successful with those grants, then we would have to look at other
Okay.
ways to fund that type of work.
Very good.
Any other questions on 433? 434, street lighting. The entire budget totals $400 for the year, and we get reimbursed. I don't think I need to say anything more than that.
Could we do
Yeah.
that on every
I'm
page?
going to roll that into 4:30 for the public hearing.
436, storm sewers and drains. This is work that the town, Public Works crew does associated with the catch basins, pipe repairs. Again, this is, any major work or replacement is funded under the Capital Improvement Fund, Fund 18. So this is just ongoing maintenance work.
I think this is great to separate this out and start drawing specific focus to it. Do we know exactly how many miles of underground stormwater piping we maintain? Do we have an inventory of that
We do.
and condition
I
reports?
believe it's around 70 miles of pipe.
Mhm.
And there are somewhere in excess of 5,000 manholes and catch basins that are associated with that system.
And when was the last time, Mark, or what's the frequency of inspection of those underground lines in order to develop budgets for lining and replacement?
As I put the road program together every year, we inspect every basin, and any pipe that's on any of those roads, in any place that we've had any complaints about clogs or basins beginning to collapse or something like that. And we try to get, through the course of the year, we probably look at 20 to 30% in addition to the stuff that's associated with the road program. We inspect about another 20 to 30%.
So it sounds like we're inspecting based on problems that have developed. Are we moving ahead in a proactive way to catch problems before we get complaints? That's, I guess,
We
where
are.
I'm going with this, is inspecting so that we can see the failures, anticipate and align them before it's a complete failure and we get a call that somebody's yard's caving in.
We started probably about 14 years ago now. We started basically at let's say, scratch with replacing corrugated metal pipe. Since then, we are down now to probably less than 15,000 feet of corrugated metal pipe that's still in the ground. We've replaced most of it with concrete pipe, which nobody has life expectancy on the concrete pipe. It's done very well. There is concrete pipe that I know is in the ground for 70 to 80 years, and it's still in good condition. As we do that, we have rebuilt all of the inlets along each one of those roads so that we're using a poured concrete method instead of a brick and block method, so the stone and mortar method is gone. So once we get these things done, they're gonna be good for 30 to 40 years or more. And so, you know, as we've done that also, we've put, you'll notice the grates with the smaller openings in them, they're called bicycle safe grates. We've replaced all of the old cast iron slotted grates or any other kind of grate that was on there with these steel bicycle safe grates. And it's stopped a tremendous amount of debris from going down into the basins, which helps us with our MS4 program. And of course, they're safer for pedestrians and for bicycle riders on the road. So we are, right now, I'm pretty confident in saying that at least 80% of our pipe and the basins that are out there are in good to excellent condition.
And they're being inspected, it sounds like on a 3 to 4 year cycle.
Yes.
And is your inspection condition reports, have you incorporated that into the town's GIS system?
I do.
Okay, so we could go in and look at the GIS and look at lines and know when they were last inspected and their condition.
And I would say, I know next year I've already earmarked around 200 plus or minus basins for either repair or reconstruction.
Okay.
So that again has also been ongoing, so, that 200 is usually a minimum. We usually wind up doing a lot more than that.
Okay. Thanks.
I was gonna tell you that,
Great job, Mark.
yeah, I was gonna say, when we did the tour, just any basin you wanna look up, they had an image of what it looked like, the conditions, the date, the time, blah, 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 like, it was so detailed. So you guys are doing a great job.
Very good.
437 repairs of vehicles. This is funding the 3 mechanics that we have who are maintaining our fleet of 59 pieces of equipment in the town. Again, no major changes to this, just a couple of highlights. We're assuming a 5% increase in vehicle fuel, just from a conservative standpoint of some budgeting. And we are planning a major maintenance overhaul of one of the backhoes in order to be able to extend the life of that piece of equipment, rather than purchase and spend $100,000 on or more on a new piece of equipment.
Well, I had a question on page 67. The actual for supplies, 2018 was 292,000. Was budgeted for that 19 was 175. And the projected actual for 2019 has been 170. And then the proposed budget for 2020 is 195. That seems like it's varying fairly significantly. What's causing that? Particularly the 292 and then the,
Just the back,
what's that?
just the repair of the backhoe is in the operating
Yeah.
cost for 2020. You're asking about the difference between the 195 and the 175.9 from 2020?
Well, yes, we're even back to 292. It seemed like a pretty,
2018.
for 2018.
I don't know specifically what's in
Yeah,
18.
that's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, we've had, and I brought this up probably last year, but we have started to keep the trucks for a longer period of time. And we are finding that the trucks are just not doing well with extending life. They spend the winter in a salt environment, which is just not good on the frames in particular. And so in 2018, we spent a significant amount of money on repairs of rebuilding a couple of the trucks. Put bodies on them and repaired frames, did some extensive costly repairs in order to be able to keep trucks. And again, as I said before, the truck that's coming in, the replacement truck for this year, we're not going to see it until February or March. The truck that it was to replace is in not good condition at all. So we may see the need for some expensive repairs on it before the new truck arrives.
So is it beneficial to keep repairing?
No, it is not. We used to replace those big trucks every 10 years. That was stretched out to 12 years. And now, because of the delivery time, the extension on the delivery time, this truck that's going is I think it's a 2007, if I remember right. So by the time we replace it, it's actually going to be over 13 years old. And it's just, with the salt environment that they work in all winter long, it's just not good.
And they're not tampered.
There was one other, just a real quick one, on page 67 again. what's causing the projection at line 230, vehicle fuel going from a 2019 actual of 49,000 to 65,000? It's not that large amount, but is that just fuel costs going up?
We're just saying we're budgeting conservatively in the event that the fuel costs do increase.
Okay, you're anticipating a rise.
Anticipating a rise.
Okay. Thank you.
While we're discussing fuel, then I'd like to ask if there are any expectations to start moving towards conversion of some of the fleet to either natural gas or propane, something that's about $1 a gallon cheaper, long-term cost savings?
I'm actually looking right now at, I'm putting a grant together for a natural gas powered pickup truck. We're gonna try one. I know the sanitary authorities had some success with the pickups. I think they tried it on a couple of bigger trucks, and if memory serves me correctly, they had some trouble with a couple of bigger trucks. I know when I talked to the rep that was out with the grant application and all that, he said they are trying to work into bigger trucks, but they're not, people aren't buying them for whatever reason. I know Vogel, for instance, is running pretty much his entire fleet on methane that they're pulling out of the landfill up at Seneca. So, you know, there is some merit to it. It's just, I think, the bigger trucks, I don't believe that the natural gas or propane is available for them yet. They're only going up to about a 26,000 GVW truck. And right now, I've only got 2 of those, and they're both like 3 years old on diesel engines. So as we, down the road, as we look to replace them, we can certainly consider that.
Okay.
But I'd really like to get this pickup in natural gas
So
and
we're
see how they
thinking
run.
about it, yeah. The authority, by the way, is using propane, Pennsylvania propane, as opposed to natural gas. Fuel delivery was much lower cost. Tankage was less costly as well.
I knew MTSA got a grant to convert their trucks.
We did,
I know.
100%
Right.
on the last
I,
two.
I read the minutes. So maybe if you could give us that
They would love to,
information.
they would love
so
to
we
share
could
and
possibly
collaborate.
apply for those.
Absolutely. I'd really like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions on 437? 438, maintenance and repair of roads. This is primarily the salary costs associated with our day in, day out maintenance on the roads. Material costs comes under the liquid fuels expenses. And there are no changes in personnel or anticipated workload. It'll just be an ongoing expense. Okay. 446, stormwater management. This is maybe the most significant change in the budget. We proposed in this budget the concept, knowing that at some point in time, Mark will be retiring, and we know that Bruce is also planning to retire. We're going to be losing significant institutional knowledge of stormwater and just day in, day out understanding of stormwater situations, and wanted to at least consider the idea of bringing somebody on board who could learn from Mark, from Bruce on stormwater issues, take over some of the MS4 responsibilities that we have, as well as maybe some other environmental issues that we are facing. So this budget includes that position, as well as the other MS4 permitting issues, the engineering work that historically have been paid for out of this fund, and because of the number of issues that I personally have been involved in, a number of us have been involved in over the course of my time here so far, we put $100,000 in towards an effort to address some of the ongoing stormwater issues. Nothing specific, but money that we could utilize for either materials, for engineering, or for work that could address some of those where people have some ongoing flooding issues.
Bob, there's mention in the write-up of the budget adding a position of environmental compliance coordinator. Is that driven by what you just said,
Yes.
the passage of the retirements of the two very people with a great deal of experience?
Yes. I think
And one person would work both with Mark and Bruce?
yes.
Yeah, I must say, when I first saw it, I questioned it, but now understanding the detailed inventory that we have, and we've got the roadmap essentially there, and we just need the manpower to focus on it, I think this is probably the right next step. I will say the same thing that I said to the fire marshal, though, with the part-time position we're adding there, is I'd like to see a good job description. I'd like to see detailed goals and objectives for the first year to maximize the effort of this new
And this,
position.
this is a position that I'm familiar with.
Mhm.
From my past work, Tricia's had similar positions in her past work. With the regulatory requirements that we face under the MS4 permit, not to mention just those day-to-day issues that come up where we have to meet a neighbor because there have been some ongoing issues. Getting that right person in there, that person who understands those situations has been tremendously helpful in these kinds of situations, and knowing that you have one person that is just able to focus on the requirements is reassuring.
That can get things done,
Yes.
yes.
What
I
sort
like
of
it.
credentials is that person going to be expected to have?
The position could be somebody that has an engineering background or environmental science background. I've seen it work both ways. And, you know, I think, again, that person, if you get the right person in place, with other interests that they may have, it's a situation, or it's a position that can help us. It could be in the parks, other environmental areas, sustainability areas, so, it's
I just
Could be
want, I'm sorry.
very
Please, go ahead.
beneficial
Go ahead,
to
I'm
the
sorry.
town.
Go ahead.
No, I think there's enough in there to get a degreed engineer. I think that works.
I had another, I guess, question on the page 73. There's, what's going on there with the projected actuals for personal services, $13,000, almost $14,000, then it's proposed for 2020, $88,000. The same thing down below, total stormwater management flood control, $62,000 to $236,500.
That's that position plus the $100,000 that we put in to address stormwater issues.
Okay, I got you. Okay. And that same thing would be true down below?
Yes.
$376,000 to
Yes, it's a
$106,000.
significant
It's all- yeah.
increase from one year over the next, but I think it would have a tremendous impact.
Thank you, Bob.
Plus, you have to think about it also is that we have this person at disposal anytime, so they can be more time effective in getting things done. Plus, this is work that we normally just outsourced. So by bringing it
Yeah,
in,
we-
it's actually gonna.
We actually
generate
will
cost
save some of
savings.
the engineering.
And we're gonna save money, so it looks like we're spending more money, but we'll actually be saving more money, and then we'll have our own guy who knows all the stuff all the time.
Agreed.
Or girl,
Person.
Person, individual.
employee. guys.
Good catch.
Non-gender, non-gender.
Good catch, Jim.
My mind. All right, next.
454 Parks. Again, this is a budget similar in nature to our prior year budgets. There's no real significant change. It includes the contractual grass cutting. We have put some money in for parking lot paving on Wall Park, and we're repairing the Vincentian access road. I guess it will depend on the condition that, you know, how they hold
Well,
up
how
in the
about
winter.
sounding that they both need help?
Absolutely.
Where is the Vincentian access road? Where is that?
Going down over the hill.
Right off of Peebles,
Right, yeah.
going down over the
By
hill.
the,
Where you go into the
by the
school.
Giant
Oh,
Eagle.
the one that just goes right down to the ballparks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. It's gravel right now, isn't it? Yeah. It's a gravel.
It's a seal coated road.
What is this? Okay.
Any questions on parks? $492, the general fund transfers. This just shows the general fund transfers year over year from the general fund into capital improvement fund. We're projecting a $2,140,000 transfer from the general fund into the capital fund for next year. And that's based on the current fund balance policy.
You gotta have tax.
We will.
Killing me.
You'll have tabs next week.
494, the general fund balances. You can see that we're trying to stay consistent with the various fund balances year to year. Yeah, I'm gonna let Tricia handle it because she understands those things better
The
than I do.
non-spendable is strictly the average prepaids that we've had from year to year, so what we expect to have in prepaids at the end of the year versus what we have going into next year, already paid for. The $500,000 is an estimate on what we anticipate will be in the fire apparatus, which is the committed reserve. And then the 3.8 is the residual effect of the $2.4 million transfer to CIP. Again, these are just projected and proposed based on prior year numbers and the audit.
Any questions on that? Okay. Capital Improvement Fund,
This is the large page.
yeah, you'll be much better off looking at the large page than the,
It's just like,
I know, I will be better off looking at the large page. And we've highlighted the proposed 2020 budget just to be able to differentiate as well as put in budget projections for 2021 through 2024. I'll just go down through them. The gateway signs, my word for that. Informational signs in the community. We've put money in place. The idea that I would like us to potentially consider is working, not only, I think the original idea was to have a sign on 19 North and Wexford Flats and another one on McKnight. I've talked a little bit with the fire departments, and their signage at Peebles or at Ingomar. They already have some electronic signs, but if we took this idea of the gateway sign one step further, where we could have a nice LED changeable sign and actually from the office change those signs to have information that will go out throughout the community. And we can find appropriate locations, maybe on 19 South as well. But in one case or another, that we could, if we want to get the word out, we can do that, similar to what you see in the information sign or on the TV that's out front. You could have that information on those signs. And as I talked to the fire department, we could have them advertising to use a fish fry or whatever that could be advertised throughout the community. It's just another way to get the word out. You have those people who still don't, are not computer savvy necessarily, but they may be driving by and see something.
Franklin Park has that one right before you get on 79.
Yes.
Maybe refresh my memory. I remember when the Heritage Center brought this same type of suggestion up along Ingomar Road, there were some concerns raised, and I just want to make sure we're taking those ideas into account. There's some concerns about distraction and things that would cause.
And I think part of this would be to try to have these in areas where people are stopping already. Maybe you don't put a changeable sign at the Heritage Center, but something that's more appropriate to that, the look of the Heritage Center. But maybe you move it down to Ingomar and Blazer Drive at the signal.
I got you. Good. All right. Just want to make sure we
And
take that into account.
rather than like one big hit, I wanted to spread those costs out over time. Okay. The sidewalk connectivity plan, $406,000. That is the Route 19 project, the funding that we just received through the multimodal fund to do the connection from the Wexford Flats down into the Oak Ridge plant. Sidewalks, Grubbs Road, from Ingomar, $278,800 is the multimodal grant project to do the remainder of Grubbs, put the bridge in over the stream and make the connection points to Blazer. We have town hall improvements. There's work on the HVAC system, security upgrades, some improvements with carpeting and flooring that
Where are we doing flooring?
just wherever we think that we need to make some changes. There's some places where it's starting to get rough that we want to look at, and you'll see that we've just plugged some figures into, but again, spread costs out over time rather than one large sum in any given year. Any questions there? Under Public Works, the $180,000 is the dump truck that we mentioned earlier, the replacement. And the $24,000 below that is the plow and spreader equipment that would go with that truck.
I'm sorry, does that say leaf vacuum on there?
It's in a future year.
In future year, in 2023.
I'm gonna find one. Okay.
Yes.
Keep trying, Bill.
Almost,
Never gives up.
almost one.
Keep trying. Not always, though.
Somebody shoot you through the head.
Thank you.
Then if you move on down to storm sewers and drains, you'll see $600,000 for storm drainage improvements, and that's work associated. Mark and
Would you mind mind if we could back up for 1 minute to the traffic control devices?
Okay,
Because there is an item that's not mentioned here, we haven't talked about for a little while, but we do have a grant application in to replace all of the processors and cameras up on Wexford Flats.
and if we are successful in that grant application, then we would just do a budget amendment in the quarter wherever that falls to undertake that.
He's gonna do an adjustment.
Yeah, if you, and I just remind you, in the budget narrative, in the message at the big, when, in October, when I gave that to you, there were some contingent projects, including that work, that if we were successful with getting those things funded, that we would add those in through a budget amendment. Stormwater drainage improvements, Mark, that's associated with the supplies and labor for the work that we do ahead of the paving program. Okay, the culvert lining at Brittany Place, this is a project that we've identified. That culvert is needing to be grouted in a manner similar to what we did over at the crossing, right? Town Square project, so be similar in nature and fairly similar cost. Resurfacing and reconstruction of the town roads, this $2,120,000 is Mark's estimate of work that would be needed in order to keep us moving in a fairly consistent cycle to the goal of 15 years. But we're, what, closer to 18 at this point?
Are the roads that, if you recall, we did not have a paving program in 2012. The money from the 2012 paving program was used to replace the culvert on Blazer and at Blazer and McKnight. Since then, we've slowed down. Prior to that, we were definitely on a 15-year program. After that, the funding was cut back, so that we're now at about 6.5 miles a year instead of 7.5. And as a for instance, the roads that are on the program to be done next year primarily are 20-year-old roads. And as we go down, unless council chooses to increase the amount of money that's available for road resurfacing, we're going to probably wind up at about 22 years in between looking at the roads as we go down the road here. And honestly, with the super paved material that we're required to use, the roads are not gonna hold up we're having a hard time getting through 20 years.
So this number reflects that effort to keep up. And also anticipates an increase in material costs.
And that cost is, as we have found over the last couple of years, that cost is almost entirely based on the cost of the oil that goes into the asphalt. So as that increases, the cost increases. In 2 years ago, because of the cost of the oil, I had to cut back on the number of roads that we did because there just wasn't enough money to carry on a significant number of roads. So I'm doing what I can to stay at 6.5 miles, but we are over a period of years, we're gonna fall behind a little bit further each year.
Question, Mark, I had heard that there was a new technique and that you were exploring this 1-inch topping method. If you can do that, I guess get it on before the cracking becomes too severe, you can extend
I did look into that,
Yeah.
and it's being used right now, mostly in Ohio. and they've got significantly different soil conditions over there than we have here. Essentially, their soil drains much better than ours does. So they are able to use less material, and have seen some success with it. There's a couple of test areas in Pennsylvania right now that PennDOT and local municipalities have tried it, and I'm keeping an eye on how that goes over a period of years. But it's too new to really, my best guess at this point, some of the roads, rather than milling the entire thing off, if they're in relatively decent shape, I've chosen to just mill 1.5 inches off, put 1.5 inches surface back down on them again. And right now, that's about as far as I would want to go with experimenting.
Okay, take advantage of the good base where you can, and
Right.
that's fine, good, thanks. Thank you.
Under stormwater management, flood control, stormwater detention facilities, we've been, over the course of the last several years, doing some upgrade work of several detention facilities over throughout the year to enhance capacity, improve water quality wherever we could. I think a real focus in this program would be to address flash flooding or those flash storms and try to control those, as well as capacity issues, to try to hold water back where we can.
Mark, how did that, what we did on Highland Road, how did that work in this last bad storm? Did that work okay?
It's held up.
We had no complaints?
There was no visible flooding when I got down there. The stream came up, but the last round of repairs that were done seemed to have held. So, and that was over a 2-inch rain, as I recall,
Right,
which was a significant amount of water coming down through there, and nobody got flooded.
Didn't have any complaints, and that's good. Okay, thank you.
The $45,000 in engineering costs, or just costs associated with doing the work in this, and it may actually come down because we're doing work in some other ways, but that's consistent, and we wanted to keep that number in place. The rain garden at, which park is that, Mark? Is that here, or is that?
I think that's the two out in the Public Works Stockport.
Okay. That's to do that work.
They're nearly done. We've got some work to do on them yet, but they're nearly done.
So that would be to complete those, and then the $22,500 to continue our efforts to put the inlet filters in areas that we feel that we can catch some of the debris that's going into the storm sewers to keep them cleaner. Under Parks and Recreation is the fitness court installation of that $133,000 that we have noted here. $90,000 is paid for by the NFC grant and the sponsorship. So within the budget, we show that revenue coming in as well.
Okay, and we did say that we would accept any small
We'll continue to
support from
accept
anyone or anything.
sponsorships from anybody else who's willing. The tennis court resurfacing, if you recall, we did open bids for that tennis court resurfacing earlier this year. They exceeded the budgeted amount, so we agreed that we'd push this project off until 2020, and we bumped that number up, consistent with what we saw in those bids. The $250,000 that you see for park revitalization grant, that's for Wall Park, and that's associated with the GEDF grant that we received through Representative Turzai's office and with Senator Williams' support. $40,600 for the Harmony Trail segment. That's an ongoing expense, rather attempt to get that done. And that completes the capital.
What's it's just may sound funny, but the very last item, Potter Park, and there's nothing there, what's,
We have something for 2021. There, if you look ahead.
Next year.
oh, there is?
Next year.
I got you, $70,000.
$70,000. This is our 5-year plan.
I understand, I just didn't focus on that column. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions on capital? You guys are making this too easy.
Good job. Good job.
Well, we already public comment.
We did everything.
Yeah.
We've got,
I thought we had some more, but it says we're done. I didn't
Do
think we
we?
were done.
What else do we have?
No, it's
Where, it's not on my list.
Not on my list either.
Still need to talk about revenue.
revenue and remaining funds.
And you'll see that this is just a summary of the 2020 expenditures for vehicles and equipment. We've broken that down to show general fund expenses and capital improvement expenses. So in one area that you can see where those expenses will occur and how they'll be paid. Revenues. With this, you can, what we're showing you the main categories of, or descriptions of our revenues, the percentages of the total. And thanks to a comment that Angela made to me while she and I were talking one day, we wanted to show this, what the impact of the real estate tax liability is on a house that's valued at $250,000. And the yearly taxes paid to the town versus the school district and the county. Sources of revenue in a pie chart. And then showing the other funds that we have. It shows that all funds. And then our budget schedule, we'll hold the public hearing next week. Discuss comments from the hearing on the 9th, along with salary reviews, and then plan to approve the budget on the 16th. And as always, those of you on council, if you have questions that you think of, feel free to talk to Tricia or to myself, and that same goes to for the public. Anybody has any questions, feel free to ask us.
Council have any comments that they want to make before we open up to public comment? No? Okay. Any public comment? About anything we talked about tonight?
Mr. Clark, you said the next meeting.
Please
Can we
come
do it at
to-
the microphone?
Hi.
Say your name.
Oh, I'm Angela Woods. Do you need my address at this meeting? Okay. For the McCandless Franklin Park Ambulance Authority meeting,
You said it was November 28th.
28th, yes.
That's Thanksgiving. Is that?
Monday, okay, that's what Steve gave me, so the 25th.
The 25th. Okay, just want to check. That's it.
And I'll make sure, because we'll get it on Savvy Citizen for the public.
Okay.
to
It's
know
next
that.
Monday, it's the fourth Monday.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Good catch.
You're just having so much fun, you don't need
You're
Thanksgiving.
just so thankful for the
I am
ambulance.
so
authority,
thankful.
that's what-
He's having so much
Any
fun,
other
he doesn't
comments?
need a meeting. I mean, doesn't need Thanksgiving.
Any other public comment? All right, hearing none. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
I almost said jinx.